If you have a podcast, the most important thing that you want to do is say people's last names correctly and their first names. She's a native of Columbus, Ohio, living in Austin, Texas. She's the co-founder of Ranowo, a donation platform that helps people easily find and donate items online for underrepresented communities of need. And so as we begin, Esther, I'm just hoping if you could tell us a little bit about your story, how you got to be in the founder seat, in the CEO seat.
Yes. Well, first off, thank you so much for the invitation to be on this podcast. I'm a huge fan, so really excited to have this conversation with you today and talk a bit about me and what I'm doing. But to that same point, a bit about my background. As you mentioned, I'm born and raised Columbus, Ohio. I'm a proud Nigerian American. I am of the Yoruba tribe. So yes, shout out to us. We all know us Nigerians can be obnoxious. But shout out to us and shout out to my parents for instilling such strong Nigerian values in me, which I think really is a huge part of what I am and what drives me and influences a lot of pieces of my life, including the company that I founded, Ranowo, which comes from a Yoruba word, Ranmi Lowell. But before getting too down the Ranowo side, I'll share a bit more about my background and how I got interested in philanthropy and building things for community. So I went to Miami University of Ohio, not Florida, in Oxford, Ohio, and I studied Black World Studies, social entrepreneurship, and marketing. So I was always very interested in understanding like how I could build something to support communities of color, but also like building something that truly was revolutionary, like net new to the community, great tech. Like I just didn't want to start a nonprofit just to start a nonprofit. I really wanted to build something that I feel like could provide a technical solution to support communities of color. So I didn't really know what that would look like, but I knew what I was very interested in studying, which was Black people, social entrepreneurship, and how to market out these ideas, which is where my marketing degree came into place. And at the end of my college career, my senior capstone, I decided to pursue my social entrepreneurship capstone. And from that capstone, I was able to essentially build my own business. That was the capstone, like build your business during this year, pitch it at the end of the year. And I convinced my professors to let me go on a 3-week trip around the US to interview different nonprofit executive directors, because at that time, the Flint water crisis had made national news in Ohio. Won't say the Flint water crisis started. It has been going on for decades, but this was winter 2017 and it was all over the news, right? And I really wanted to go and support. Flint is not that far away from Ohio, but I was a student. Like I didn't really have the time to be able to, drive up and drop off the water bottles, so water filters, etc. And a lot of the organizations that were saying, hey, donate to us, they were all super large organizations like the Red Cross. And I was convinced that there were grassroots, on the ground nonprofits that were doing the work. They just didn't really have the brand presence online for my fellow peers and I to be able to find them. So at that time, I'm like, man, I'd love for there to be some type of platform or place where folks can find like vetted nonprofits that are doing the works in communities of color. But before I go off and build this thing, let me talk to nonprofits, executive directors to see if this is something that they think the community needs. So I went around and probably interviewed over 20 nonprofit executive directors in Chicago, New York, DC, LA, Cincinnati. And the first question, one of the questions I would ask them is, hey, like, what do you all need? Like, what do you need within your nonprofit? What's a really like big blocker for you? And as you can imagine, they all said, we need money. We need money. That's what we need, Esther. Period, point blank. We need money. We need donors. We need active donors. And I'm like, okay, you need money to do what? And they're like, well, we have bills that we need to pay. Yes, there are like overhead. Like people don't try to shy away from it. and the nonprofit side. But yes, your dollars do go to keep the lights on because they have to keep the lights on. They have to pay staff, and there's also like tangible items that they need for a lot of their programming. If it's a soup kitchen, they need to purchase soup. They need to purchase the carrots. They need to purchase the ladles that they use for the soups and things like that. So what I was hearing from a lot of these executive directors was that they needed money to purchase things, money to put on programs, money to pay for people's salaries. But they weren't doing the great job of sharing that story and making it super transparent for donors to understand where their money was going. Yeah. So at that time, that's when I decided I wanted to build something that would help share that story and increase that transparency. And that's where like Ranowo started to form.
So the college professor in me is really interested in this curriculum for your undergrad studies. Can you talk a little bit more about that? So say the name of it was like Black Global Experiences, something like that, marketing and social entrepreneurship. Like, how did those three things, how did they come together? Like, what were your classes like?
Yeah, so these are three separate things. So this is not one degree. So I got my degree in marketing, which was in the business school. My concentration was in social entrepreneurship, which sat under our like entrepreneurship department in the business school.
Yeah.
So from the day I started at Miami in the Farmer School of Business, I knew I wanted to study entrepreneurship, but I knew I couldn't have that be the only thing that I studied. And I started taking some Black World Studies classes simply, honestly, because I enjoyed them and I kept it up. I had enough to graduate it with it in my major. I just ended up selecting it as my minor. Y'all know how those credits be.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And when it came time to my capstone, like I designed it essentially. I was like, I want a way to fuse all three of these together. And if you're an entrepreneurship minor, there is a capstone where essentially it's like a build your business capstone. And the first semester you spend going to like an incubator type of program. It's called the Brandery in Cincinnati. I don't want to mess it up, but there's an entire like incubator that's typically available for like startup business owners. Like it's not typically available for students, but Miami created that relationship. So we would have to go once a week, learn from other startup founders, pitch them our ideas. And then the second piece of it was, which is what I did, which was to create a business.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing. So one of the things that I'm really interested in right now is negotiation. And like, I never took a class on negotiation. I think every high school student needs to take a class on negotiating. And when you talk about convincing the faculty members to allow you to do the capstone the way that you did it, I imagine that is you having to pitch them and negotiate with them to give you the freedom to do that. So talk about like, how did you do that? Like, how did you convince people to allow you to really start your entrepreneurship journey, your data collection, right? Yeah. For your entrepreneurship journey as a college student?
Absolutely. I think first off, they knew who I was, right? Mm-hmm. Like they knew my brand, they knew the way that I carried myself, and they knew that I wasn't just gonna go off for 3 weeks and not do anything, because I was a high performing student within the entrepreneurship department. I TA'd several classes. So part of it is like I was able to walk the walk because I've talked the talk. Like they've known the type of student that I was. And I also was able to secure like a couple $1,000s from our Black World Studies department. Also just leaning on the relationships that I built within that department. So I think like showing up and doing the work is key, but also establishing very strong relationships with your professors, and not even just your direct professors, but the other faculty, the people that run the department as well. Because there were several folks that I never took a single class with, but I had relationships with them. So when it came time to them have to, sign the dotted line to approve this, unique capstone, they were very aware of like who I was and what I stood for. So that made the ask pretty clear. And secondly, I made it easy for them to say yes because I wrote it all down. I told them what I was going to be doing, where I was going to be going. So I always try to encourage folks, like make it easy for them to say yes. Try to answer all of the questions ahead of time. So I think preparation and like documentation also helped.
That's good. So let's talk about. I think your autobiography like really leads into the biography part of the interview where you're talking about the story behind Ranowo. And so, can you talk about like how did you found it, where did you found it, and what really conceptualized or made the idea become concrete for you to execute?
Absolutely. So I think after that 3-week trip that I went on, it was very clear that there was a gap. Like there was something that these nonprofits needed. They were looking for some type of solution. I no longer was just building something that I, Esther, believed should exist, but this has been affirmed by other people in the market that have been in this field for decades, also saying that they would like something that would help them with storytelling and increase transparency. So from there, I had a technical co-founder. We had to have a technical co-founder help us build this business. You
Mm,
weren't allowed to just build it by yourself. You had to have someone technical. So you had to pitch it in class. The non-technical person had to pitch it in class, and I pitched it. And my co-founder till this very day, Nick, loved the idea and came on board. And since 2017, we've been rocking with each other. So I think it's important for you to not only be able to have the vision, but be able to sell that vision, right? Like it's not just an idea, like being able to pitch it to people within a room. These are students that I did not know. Like I did not know Nick at all. Like, and I just had to pitch my idea, and
yeah.
he sold to him. So I feel like that was a very pivotal moment in the Ranowo journey of just like day one, pitching this idea to someone technical, being able to convince them was very critical. But after, as I mentioned, that 3-week journey, securing that technical co-founder, I did a lot of interviews on campus. I sent out surveys to students because essentially, originally, what I was envisioning was a dual side marketplace.
Mm,
It was a marketplace that included an offer for donors, so donors being able to donate to nonprofits, and an offer also for nonprofits to be able to share their stories about the donations that they are receiving. So after conducting that survey, I learned that a lot of folks wanted to know more about where their money was going. Shocker, people want to know where their money
yeah.
is going. And as I was doing more research, I actually saw that there really wasn't a marketplace or a platform where you could see exactly where your money went. There was, Amazon wish list where nonprofits could make their own wish list and you could purchase individual items,
Yeah.
but there wasn't anything that was necessarily within like the donor side or within like the nonprofits hands. Like, and Amazon wish list is Amazon wish list. It only
Yeah.
lives on Amazon. It's only Amazon
Mhm.
products. Like it's very, limiting in a way. So from there, I thought of, okay, a marketplace would be amazing, but I was intimidated to build a marketplace. I was like, that
Mm,
would be so much a dual side marketplace, not a singular marketplace. So then I decided to focus on the area of storytelling. I'm like, let me try to help nonprofits with that issue that they have. And the technical solution that we came up with was creating automated impact reports. Because as we learned, donors wanted to know where their money was going, and
yeah.
nonprofits are struggling with telling their story. They don't have staff that they can hire to, make these beautiful impact reports, send the emails, make the Instagram. They don't have time, they don't have money for that. So I'm like, let's build a solution that makes it very simple and easy for them to be able to put that together. So that's what I ended creating with my capstone, was like an automated impact report that nonprofits could use. They type in a dollar amount that they received and what they used
Mm,
for that money, and it would auto generate like photos of the items that they would type in. So if they
yeah.
would type in socks, like we would have a nice photo of socks and a beautifully outlined document, which I think did fulfill a need for a nonprofit. But after I graduated, the marketplace was just still on my heart. I was like, I still want to build that marketplace.
Yeah.
And then starting in 2019 is when I started building that dual side marketplace.
Mm. I'm interested in this. The technical founder and the non-technical founder. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is?
Yes. So a technical founder is someone that can code, essentially, someone
Mm,
that can either code your website or code aspects of your website, can code your app if you're building an app. And in my case, I knew we were not going to start out with an app. We were either going to start out with like a web application that would eventually be an app, or simply just like a platform, a website that would host all of our information. So we moved forward with just building the website. So my co-founder, he builds websites for a living. That's his full-time job as well. And that's what he studied in undergrad. He studied computer science and web design. So that's what a technical founder is. A non-technical founder, which is me, is someone that doesn't have a background in computer science, someone that may not necessarily know how to code, but has the vision, is all in on working on the company, and can support in a variety of other areas, which is what I do. I'm the marketing person. I was the supply chains logistics person. I was a comms person. And it was just about everything. And Nick supported me in a lot of those areas as well, but he tends to mainly focus on the technical side.
Yeah. Talk about how you are able to manage the relationship between the technical and the non-technical founder, because y'all didn't know each other before, right? To me, that's a scary thing. Like right now, I got a business with my homeboy who I went to grad school with from my other podcast. And we basically do the same thing. And they always say you don't want to found with somebody who does the same thing you do. Yeah. But I'm comfortable with him because I know him. That's my homeboy. You know what I mean? Like, so how are you managing and really cultivating that relationship with your technical co-founder who you really didn't know before?
Yeah, for sure. I think it takes a lot of intentionality, because I will say we are very, very different. I'm a Nigerian American Black woman. He is a white male from California. Like, we didn't have any mutual friends. He was in a fraternity. I was not in a sorority at Miami. Like, just honestly very different worlds, but we share a mutual passion, which is building something that can support communities, building something that we believe can change the world. So from the very first day that I pitched it, he loved how big the vision was. And a lot of folks in my class were intimidated by how big the vision was, or they thought, oh, that's changing the world, really? Yeah. Like they just weren't bought in, and he was bought in from the very, very first day. And so till this day, we're still very different. We still don't have a ton of similar like interest outside of what we're building, but I love the diversity that we're able to bring, and of course the range of experiences that we're also able to bring in as well, because I'm building the platform for all people to be able to support communities of color. So being able to have that diversity of experiences and backgrounds like really supports building a platform that is designed for all folks to be able to use.
You know, it's interesting. You made a really good point. Because I'm guilty of this. For me, I'd be like, I want all mine to be black, 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 right? Okay. But you have to think about the product that you're making or the entity that you're creating, right? And you said you want to build a platform so that all people can contribute to, you know, Black nonprofits, what Black social entrepreneurs folks are doing everywhere, right? And so if you want everyone to do that, then you're going to need as diverse a perspective as you can in the leadership or the folks who are working with you to build that platform. So it makes sense that Nick, white guy, California, frat, is on your team, because I imagine that he could even add some perspective to that from someone who was not a person of color. So that was I think a great point that you made there with that. So
certainly, I think FUBU, for us, by us, but also you can have people that are not us helping you build. Right. And that doesn't take away from what you're trying to build, the mission, the impact that it may create. And honestly, in some cases can add to it.
Yeah. So there's an interesting, I had a former episode maybe a year ago now, about this book called Black Faces in High Places. And in their framework, they say that the people who get the furthest are the ones with the most diverse collection of mentors, right? And so one of the one of the brothers is a provost at one of the campuses, one of the Rutgers campuses, and he was saying, listen, you think there's a lot of Black guys who are provosts? It's like, there's not a lot of us. So I have to find a mentor who's not a Black guy. You know what I mean? Or else I'm going to be limited. And so, again, I just want to emphasize that as we are building our companies, as we're building our nonprofits, that it's important for us to think strategically about having a diversity of people who are working for us. Can you talk about, I don't know if Nick is or isn't your friend right now. Can you talk about, I don't want to say this, why being friends with the people you're building with isn't the most important thing? Because like, I think we all seek comfort in the community of people that we're working with, we're building with, but that may not necessarily be the type of relationship that you need with your co-founder, with the people that you're working with who are on the same mission as you are. Hey everyone, thank you again for your support of Entrepreneurial Appetite. Beginning this season, we are inviting our listeners to support the show through our Patreon website. The founding 55 patrons will get live access to our monthly discussions for only $5 a month. Your support will help us hire an intern or freelancer to help with the production of the show. Of course, you can also support us by giving us 5 stars, leaving a positive comment, or sharing the show with a few friends. Thank you for your continued support.
Absolutely. I think you have to look for competence. You have to look for skill in that area that you specifically needed. Like, I probably could have done a lot of searching and a lot of digging to find someone that looked like me. Obviously, it was a requirement for my class, and I think I was the only Black person in the class, let alone a Black woman.
Yeah.
So, and everyone else was a white person. So I had to pick from that class.
Yeah.
So I essentially was forced to have to pick within that group. But for folks right now, I would certainly seek out to have other people outside of your friends, because sometimes you just need someone to call you out professionally once you guys set your goals, right? And to have a friend do that, or a sibling, or a cousin, you might not take it as seriously because you're like, oh, okay, they'll be fine. It's okay. We could be a couple days late on this. They'll understand. You don't play that when you have, a fellow team member that's relying on you to deliver a deliverable, right? Yeah. I feel like I don't want to say I wouldn't take my friend's feedback as seriously, but I certainly don't really I don't try to cut down any feedback that he gives me the way that I know I would ignore some feedback that I might get from family and friends, to be honest.
That's good. I want to get into some conceptual things, right? About how do you view social entrepreneurship, and how do you view yourself as a social entrepreneur?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. It's an evolving space. What I say right now, there's social entrepreneurship and there's also social impact, which I know they're two different things, but they're both things that are very near and dear to my heart, as I'm a social impact manager at DoorDash and I am building a social entrepreneurial company. And essentially with social entrepreneurship, I view that as a space where people are able to build things that are supporting the community, the broader community. In the simplest definition possible, I think it's about using creativity, using your strengths, using your passions to be able to build something that can make a larger impact. And you'll see a ton of different definitions out there, and I'm sure all of them are just as right. But what it means to me specifically is about building something that I think will outlive me and building it for communities that I care about. And when it comes to Ranowo, that came down to building a donation platform for people to be able to give to nonprofits supporting communities of color. And why that falls under social entrepreneurship, it's a brand new service, it's a brand new marketplace. I have yet to find something that looks just like it. And it's something that it is social in nature, as it being a dual side marketplace. And of course it's entrepreneurial because I built the business. But social impact in itself is a little bit different. It's a little bit more corporate, right? It's building programs that are supporting whatever audience that's your specific company is looking to support. At DoorDash, we look to support women, people of color, and immigrants. That's what all of our programs and our social impact programs are designed to support. So social impact is going to look different, but so will social entrepreneurship look different to different entrepreneurs as well.
Yeah, since you mentioned DoorDash and your work there, can you talk about how you are navigating your 9 to 5 while also being this founder of Ranowo?
Absolutely. It's a bit challenging sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I had to take all of 2022 off from Ranowo because, and I used that to be a little bit more heads down with DoorDash. I joined DoorDash. I left Meta. I was at Meta for 4 years in sales and moved over to DoorDash April of 2021, and really wanted to like really go in the weeds in April in 2022. And I just didn't feel like I could do both to the level that I felt comfortable at in 2022. So I took a pause on Ranowo at that time. And I also wanted to re-envision a new future for Ranowo, which I can talk about later, as we are currently getting ready to launch that. But I think now that I'm back to working on Ranowo from my 5 to 9, 5 p.m. to 9 p.m., it just really comes down to time blocking. Like, everyone on my team knows if it's 5:01, Esther's not replying, I am not responding.
Yeah.
I take my self-care really, really seriously. I try to start my day either with meditation or some type of exercises, whether it's breathing or physical, because I know my days are going to be long. I know it's going to include many DoorDash meetings. I know it's going to include work that I'm going to have to do for Ranowo. So starting the day well, and I think having intentional time throughout the day for breath work and like solitude is important, because I'm getting requests all day from folks. So carving out time where I can be by myself, even if it's just my lunch or walking my dog, I think helps with the mindset. And I hired a personal assistant. I had a personal assistant in 2021 and a part of 2022, which was fantastic. So I'm a big proponent on hiring personal assistants, even if you're not an entrepreneur. We should all be millionaires. The author's name is escaping me. Maybe we can edit it in, but she's a Black woman, and she talks about how like hiring a personal assistant, it's great for everyone, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, because you're able to be so much more efficient with your time.
I think I was going to dive into like strategies for success, but I think you've mentioned a few, right? And so one is self-care. The other one I think is knowing when to hit the pause button. So you got this new job with DoorDash, moving from Meta, and you needed to kind of establish yourself there the first year or so. I mean, I read this book called The First 90 Days, talks about the first 90 days at a new job, you really need to make an impact. And then you also talked about this, you said personal assistant or virtual assistant? Or is it the same thing for you?
I guess my personal assistant was virtual. So yeah,
Okay,
I would say virtual assistant. That was great, because it freed up a lot of the admin that I would need to do, that honestly, as an entrepreneur that can suffer with self-sabotage sometimes, I will no longer have the excuse of, hey, I'm having an email issue, my VA can handle that. So I'm not spending all my time on that. I'm really working on establishing the vision and working with Nick on, unblocking things that really need to get done.
Yeah. So, and the virtual assistant is like another key strategy for success. What are maybe some other things that you would suggest to people who are founders or interested in working specifically in social entrepreneurship that would help make them more successful?
I would reach out to folks that are within your space that are doing things similarly to you. That has been a game changer for me, just connecting with other social entrepreneurs, other folks that are building tools to support communities, to support nonprofits. And you will find that social entrepreneurs in general, like, they don't gatekeep. They are not, trying to stay within their own bubble. not wanting to have quote unquote competition. They've always been open. Every single time I've reached out to someone, like cold message on LinkedIn, they've always been extremely receptive from, and I'm not just saying like entrepreneurs, I'm saying like directors of philanthropy at large organizations. Like they know the game. They know what it is. A big part of working in social entrepreneurship and social impact is having to rely on other folks, whether it's for donations, asking for folks that can, are specialists within the specific area. So I would certainly like shoot your shot at every opportunity that you have and look into organizations that can really help you hone some of those skills. I joined the ACCP forum, which is a forum of like social impact professionals, but also social entrepreneurs I've seen join it as well. So just do research on like who are the folks that are actually trying to build up this community. And I will say there's not a ton of Black women that I would say are visible, but we are out there. We are out here.
Yeah, that's good. We talked about navigating the 9 to 5 while you're founding your startup. I want to talk about navigating your city because I lived in Austin for 4.5 years while I was there in graduate school. And Austin is a unique place for Black folks. I call Austin White Atlanta because it's white people's Atlanta, which means there's actually a lot of things to do there. There's actually a lot of cool things to do in Austin. So talk about like how you've been able to navigate Austin. I'm gonna call it White Atlanta. How you've been able to navigate White Atlanta and get things done and make connections to do what it is that you need to do to be successful in your career, but then also in your startup.
I think I've just had to put myself out there. I go to meetup events. I literally would search people on LinkedIn, like social impact, Black woman, and you can change your location to Austin. Like I would actively look for posts, especially when I first moved out here in 2017. And I would ask people that I knew had been here for a while, hey, like, who do you think I should connect with if I'm building this? And they would say, hey, you should go talk to Preston. You should do this, do that. And what I find is like a lot of those people, they're super, super glued into what's happening in the city. So once you meet with one of them, it's kind of like you're meeting with all of them because they all know each other. They will proactively like tap on your shoulder, send you notes. And these are people that you may not see every other month, but like they'll still reach out to you. You'll see them at events. They'll send you, different events and different opportunities that they think will be a good fit for you. So I think being proactive is a very like city where you have to come to and be proactive to find connections. But once you do, you're in. And it's also important to show up for your community as well. I think that's a problem that Black Austin has. We are here, but people don't always show up. They may not always show up to go to the events. They may not show up, or if they do, they may not show up consistently. So our community sometimes just feels a little bit inauthentic because you're not seeing the same people. And we don't have a ton of third spaces. There are third places in spaces. I know that's a big topic that folks are talking about right now, but there's people that are actively trying to change that in the city. Origin Studio House, they're opening up a coffee shop in East Austin, which was historically Black. So I'm really, really excited about the future of Black Austin. But I do think it can be a bit challenging navigating the city, especially if you come from a place like Atlanta or like New York or like a Chicago, where there's just you already know where people are going to after church on Sundays. You already know what the spot is on a Wednesday night. It's going to be different in Austin. It's just not always going to be the same spots. But I love it. I really do. And I'm excited to build here. I recently joined a nonprofit board called Carry for Kids. It's a nonprofit that's disrupting the school to prison pipeline here in Central Texas. They have mental health advisors in middle schools and high schools supporting predominantly Black and Hispanic youth. And these are the youth that have been expelled, that are constantly in detention, that like have been written off by many of their teachers. And they're really giving them a second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth chance to stay within school and give them additional opportunities to advance. So there's great, great work that's happening in this city, specifically to support communities of color.
Yeah. I I'm thinking about the last time I was in Austin. It was at Capital Factory, and Preston was there, and it was February. And it was a Black History Month thing. You know, all the Black stuff happened in February, but it's Capital Factory's Black event. And I left there thinking to myself, you know what? No, last time I was in Austin was South by Southwest. I take that back. And I went to a few Black things there as well. And I came to realization that Austin is getting a Black. What I mean by that is like growing up, like I grew up mostly in New Jersey. So Black people in Philadelphia had a certain, like you could look at them, you could, their style, accent, oh, you're from Philly. Like if you were from New York, style, accent, oh, you from New York. If you're from Cali, style, accent, oh, we know you're from Cali. I think it's not, I don't have a concrete sense of what it is. It's kind of ambiguous right now. But when I go to Austin, it's like, oh, you live it. It's like it's obvious to me that they are Austin Black. And I don't see that necessarily, that same type of Black, that nuanced Black. I don't see that in other places where I go where I see Black folks. I don't.
Nuanced Black. I would definitely say that defines a lot of Black people in Austin. Like everyone's doing more than one thing. And everyone has a creative outlet. Most people have some type of creative outlet that they're doing within the city, or just for themselves that they're extremely passionate about and vocal about, which is what I love about the people that I meet here. That's so interesting though, Langston, that you mentioned that. Now I want to know what are the characteristics? What does it look like to an outsider?
I don't know yet. That's the thing. I know I see it. I don't have the words for it. And there's not like oh, you wearing that type of hat, you tie your sneakers that way. I don't have all of that yet, but I know when I'm in Austin and I see the Black folks there that I'm experiencing a type of Black Austin. And maybe it's because Austin has pulled people from different places. And I was in a space where people who were trying to be founders, right? Everybody's like, people are trying to be tech founders, right? Or social entrepreneurs through tech somehow, some way. And there's a certain language that happens in those spaces.
Yes.
Right. And there's a certain cadence that you use when you're pitching, when you're talking to groups. But, you know, Black folks have a way of massaging it culturally. And I think that's what's beginning to happen in Austin. I think there's a massaging around the way that you present yourself as a founder that is happening here that may not be happening necessarily in other places. Because like you can go to New York and you could be a founder, but New York has a type of Black that exists already outside of being a founder. But I think because of what's happened in Austin with people being pushed out, what was once like a palatable Blackness in Austin, and I'm not trying to dismiss Black folks who've been there for generations and things like that. That's not my attempt, but it's transforming into something that is rooted in what is becoming Black Austin now. So it's really interesting to see as someone who's an outsider.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that with me. I'm going to be pondering that after this podcast and thinking about it. But I'm really excited about the future of Black Austin. If you would have told me, I've been in Austin 6 years this July. If you would have told me 4 years ago that I'd still be here, I would have told you were lying. I was like, I'll be here for 2 years and then I'm going to go get my MBA somewhere and I'll see you. Like I'll probably go to Chicago or New York, but it's a city of builders, I will say. Like Black people that stay in Austin for longer than 2 years are all building something. Every single one of them.
Right.
People that are transplanted to Austin and you've stayed longer than 2 years, you're building something.
Right.
That energy you don't always find in other cities. You can go to an LA and a New York. They're not, and they're vibing. They're vibing. They're not building. They're not building.
That's
what I love about like 2+ year Black Austin people. Yeah. And that's why I'm so bullish about our future, because the people that are staying here are building amazing things.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think Black Austin is building. And I think that's probably what I see there that I didn't necessarily have the words for. So I'm glad you added that. That was good. And as we talk about like what's happening in Black communities in Austin and everyone is building, we met through this fellowship called Notley. And I think you're the only Black person from the Austin Fellowship this year. Are you the only Black person, Austin, this year? I don't want to forget the other Black person if there is another one.
I don't want to forget either. So I'm actively thinking, but
you're one. If you're not the only one, you're one of maybe two from the Austin side of the fellowship.
Yep.
And so
our cohort from our 2023 cohort.
Right, from that specific cohort. And so I'm wondering how the way I view the Notley Fellowship was a tremendous opportunity to build social capital and network and build community. And so how have you built social capital in community in the city that you're in? And what are some specific strategies that you've seen for that? Or maybe even talk about your experience with Notley.
For sure. So I think I first heard about Notley when I was at Facebook, and a fellow coworker said, hey, there's this organization that wants to give a presentation to nonprofit like marketing workers about Facebook. Like they want someone to speak about like creative on Facebook, what's the best type of post to make, and specific for nonprofits. And I thought that was amazing. Even though I was in sales and I didn't necessarily work with nonprofits, I still wanted the opportunity to be able to talk through some strategies that I think will just universally work for nonprofits. So that was in, I think, 2018, because I did some digging to pull it up. It was either early 2018 or early 2019, but they had just opened their huge space on Springdale. And that was one of the first events that they hosted within that space. So I was just like, wow, this organization is having this free webinar for nonprofits. This is amazing. I connected with a number of the nonprofits that came to that event and stayed connected with the organization just via social media. And then another one of my coworkers reached out to me months later saying like, hey, you should meet with one of my friends. He owns like this like social impact company that like invests in businesses that are looking to support the community. I had no idea, but it happened to be Dan. So my friend introduced me to Dan, who owns, what's Dan's last name? Dan Graham. My friend introduced me to Dan Graham, who owns Notley, along with his wife, Lisa Graham. And I met with him in person. I talked to him about Ranowo. I showed him, this is probably V1 of what our like website looked like. And he was like, yeah, this is really cool. I think his biggest point of feedback at that time was like, I would like to share a direct link to whether it's a nonprofit or to the specific item that they are trying to get more of. Like I would love just to post that on my Facebook back in the day when we were all on Facebook like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really good feedback, but it affirmed like the desire for like social impact practitioners and social impact leaders of wanting that transparency like that. And this was before like people were coming at Black Lives Matter and coming at all of these large organizations for not being transparent with their funds.
Right.
It was the first time that I had met with like a leader and was like, yeah, like what you're building, like this makes sense. Like this is good. So that's how I got tied in with the Notley's fellowship. And every year after that, I would see them post a fellowship and I was like, I don't know if I should apply. I don't think Ranowo's there yet. Like I just always, again, self-sabotage, which is something I've been working on. And when I saw it become available for 2023, I was like, Esther, you have to do it.
Right.
Like you can use this as a point of accountability. You'll be amongst all of these other folks that are passionate about social entrepreneurship, passionate about social impact. We're coming out of me not really connecting with a ton of folks in person due to the pandemic. This will put me back out there physically. So I jumped at the opportunity to be part of this fellowship. And that's what I really am looking forward to, honestly, meeting with folks that are like-minded and folks that aren't like-minded as well, but really care about social impact and can provide me feedback, can be other, thought partners as I build this, and how I can support them as well. Because I realized like I wouldn't be here where I am today without the support of others. So I would love to be able to give back to folks in our community as well.
Yeah. So we're getting close to time. I know you did a little teaser about like what's coming next with Ranowo. So can you talk about what you have coming up? What do you see in the future for your startup?
Absolutely. So as Ranowo looks like today is a dual side marketplace where nonprofits have campaigns that donors can purchase specific items that the nonprofits needs. And we've been running it for a couple of years. We've gotten several thousands of dollars worth of donations. However, it's an extremely manual process running marketplaces, especially dual side marketplaces. During the pandemic, we would post a campaign that included crayons and paper products and things like that. And the pricing would fluctuate like crazy day to day. So sometimes we'd be losing money on the donation that people were making. And as we live in this world where prices are continuing to fluctuate, the price of goods are continuing to go up, it's just been a bit challenging to have the main service be tied down to specific products. And another thing that I examined during my year of like solitude is what I call it in 2022, was that a lot of philanthropy and asking for goods feels a bit like, and I hate using this term, I wish there was a better term, but trauma porn. And it's everywhere, like whether from small organizations, medium organizations, large organizations, like we try to avoid it at all costs on our platform, but it still feels a little iffy when you're putting up a picture of a student or putting up even a picture of their school. Like I really try to avoid posting people at all, but it just still feels wrong.
Yeah.
So as I really examined that, I was just like, man, I wish there was a way. I want people to be able to give back to their community. Clearly, people want to give back to their community. Let's make it easy for them to do that and match them to causes that they care about via surveys. So instead of you having to go on our platform right now and click into individual campaigns and purchase individual items, add things to your cart, it's a fun experience. It feels like an e-commerce platform, right?
Yeah.
Let's give you a survey. Tell us what causes that you are interested in supporting, what areas in the world you're interested in supporting. Tell us what you're willing to commit, $25 a month, $50 a month, $10 a month. Like, what's your limit? And let's make that recurring. So let's turn like passive folks that really care about giving back to their community. Let's make it easy for you to give back consistently. Instead of giving off one individual items here and there, let you set your own goals and set your goal of, hey, I want to give $500 this year to these causes that I know, like that I care about. And I'm going to let Ranowo to handle it. But I know by the end of this year, I want to give 500. Ranowo, moving forward, we're going to be able to help people track the donations that they're giving based off of their survey data. And we'll also be utilizing AI to help us with the matching of the nonprofits. So that's what I'm calling Ranowo 2.0. There'll still be marketplace aspects. Folks will still be able to purchase individual items for certain nonprofits, but how I envision us scaling is allowing folks to tell us what they're interested in. We connect them to the nonprofits. They set up recurring givings, and we tell them, hey, based off your $25 donation that you gave us, this is what we were able to do. But this is for the folks that don't want to do the individual picking. They just want to give you your money, and they trust that we will give it to nonprofits that are supporting communities of color.
Yeah. And for our final question, you know this. Listen, before the podcast even started, I was doing the run through of like what we're going to talk about today. And I was like, and you know, we're going to end with the final. And she held up the book. And so Esther, when she says that she listens to the podcast, she does listen to the podcast. And so those of you who listen, you all know that we started off as a book club. And so Esther, just tell us what you're reading right now, what's inspiring you, what's keeping you going, whether it be in your personal life or in your business. What do you have to suggest for us to read?
So I'm currently reading The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. Her last name is spelled Wiest. And the subtitle for this book is Transforming Self-Sabotage into Self-Mastery. And that's one of my main goals this year, is to self-sabotage myself less and focus on the things that I can control. Because often as a self-sabotager, you can focus so much on the things that you'd have no control over.
Yeah.
And that just sucks up your time, and it makes you feel like you can't achieve what you actually want to achieve. So this book has been great for changing my mindset. And I think mindset is everything in entrepreneurship. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend it to folks that may struggle with self-sabotage and are like looking to overcome that.
All right. Esther, thank you for coming. We appreciate you. Hold that book up real quick for those who are going to watch on YouTube. The Mountain is You. All right. Thank you, Esther, again for coming. We appreciate you. Tell us where we can find out about Ranowo. Where do we go to find more information out?
Yes, well, you can support us on ranowo.org, not .com, and you can follow us on Instagram at Ranowo Community.
All right. Esther, once again, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.